Rajiv Malhotra, sir, I've been waiting for this podcast. Thank you for being on the Ranveer Show.
My honor. I'm delighted to be here.
Sir, how's it going? How are you?
Chal raha hai, life goes on, and I'm recovering from some illness. I don't want to get too personal, but I'm delighted to be here on your show. I've heard so much about you, appreciated what you do, and so this is a good opportunity for me to also share my life, my ideas.
So, I think the show had begun with this intention of taking ideas, wisdom out to the world. That's why we had begun this podcast in the first place. Very rarely do I have a guest where I myself am slightly confused about where to begin. Because you know so much about so many topics, be it geopolitics, history, AI. What would you say is your life subject? And I'll tell you why I ask you this, because I strongly believe that while everyone's sort of a polymath nowadays, even the best polymaths have one subject which is their favorite above the others.
This
So,
is a
what's
very
your subject?
It's a brilliant question. Very good place to start. I'm very happy. So my one quest since I was a kid, early teens, maybe even earlier, has been a very philosophical discovery of the nature of the self, the nature of the universe, and my place in it, and hence what should be my life's mission. What am I supposed to do? I was a philosophical, contemplative person as a young child. I read a lot. I read so many philosophies, at a very early age, and this quest of discovery led me to philosophy. Then it led me to the physics. I became a physicist for the sole purpose of understanding philosophy, both through a scientific lens, and of course, very deeply interested in reading and understanding the Vedic traditions, the Buddhist tradition, the Jain tradition, and Christianity, Judeo-Christianity, Western philosophy. So my quest for knowledge about the higher levels of existence beyond just mundane has been the primary purpose of my life, primary objective. I achieved a lot in business. I quit all that in order to pursue this. And I keep pursuing this. And when I run out of, when I feel that my pursuit is wrong or pursuit is limited or reached a dead end, I reset. Many times in my life, I have reset and reinvented myself in order to continue this pursuit. So the pursuit is the same, but how I'm doing it, with whom I'm doing it, how I've defined myself keeps changing in order to optimize this particular pursuit. And the pursuit is not just for intellectual and academic interest of knowledge and writing books, but I want to guide my life with it. I want to use this knowledge of the ultimate reality to understand geopolitics, to understand the world, to understand India, to understand America. How do they fit into this cosmic game? If there's a cosmic game, where do we all fit in? Why are we here? What are we supposed to do? What are the rules of the game? This is very interesting. This is a game where there is no user manual. You can't say, "Okay, user manual is these are the rules, and you do this and that." Every game that humans have invented, we have some kind of a guide, and there's some headquarters you can go and challenge. There is no such thing. Yet we know that we are supposed to do certain things. We're not supposed to do certain things, but there is no headquarters where you can go and make a petition or have a hearing or hold someone to responsible to explain it to us. So the interesting thing is we're supposed to figure out the rules. That is part of the game, that we're supposed to figure it out. So I find this life and existence to be a fascinating topic, and I've devoted much of my life to its pursuit.
So, it's so funny that you talk about the pursuit of life and, the pursuit of purpose almost. We had someone called Gauranga Das Prabhuji on the show. He's a monk from the ISKCON order. And he spoke about how life's purpose in many ways is the moment of death. Like how everything leads up to that one moment and then there's a new beginning. So keeping that concept in mind, it's a direct question to you. Again, and this is not a direct question to your knowledge, it's a direct question to you, the man. Do you think of your own death ever? Because it's something I've been thinking about a lot after that particular episode.
Well, there is something called death meditation. Death meditation is a type of meditation in Buddhism. I have been in it for several big courses. It's also in Shaivism, and death meditation is where you achieve such stillness of the body, and then stillness of the mind, stillness of the emotions, but you are alert and you're witnessing yourself. And in that state of heightened witness, without involvement, without emotion, without feeling, you suddenly see a sort of silencing and stopping. You imagine the stopping of the body, the stopping of the mind, the stopping. So each layer of existence, one by one, you kind of do, it's a stimulation of death. And you achieve perfect stillness at all levels, but the consciousness is alert but still. Now, when you practice that, and the Buddhists practice it, so that when they are dying, it's not a very traumatic experience. It is not something you're afraid of because you felt it before already. And it's a very spontaneous transition to another state of existence. So I have no fear of death. I mean, I'll be very straight with you. I have no fear of death. I don't want pain, bodily pain, but I have no fear of what happens, where I go, and all that. I mean, I'm quite relaxed about the death challenge, the death trauma that everybody faces. And I'm interested, having experienced this higher existence, thanks to a guru my guru in the 90s, which is what led me to change my whole life, give up all my businesses and industry and pursue this. Thanks to that experience I was given, now from that experience of existence, I'm re-entering the world of Vyavarika, a mundane world where there's fighting going on, there's a Kurukshetra, there's good guys and bad guys, and there's all kind of social responsibility, all kind of geopolitics. I look at all of this through a certain lens, and that lens you achieve, you attain when you have actually had this kind of a transformational experience. So that is how I'm looking at the world.
How are you looking at the world? Could you explain it a little deeper, keeping modern day geopolitics in mind? Because we talk a lot about, I mean, at least the youth talks a lot about World War III, that how it's going to be based on cyber warfare, how it's already begun, how the pandemic is probably a version of World War III. So, sir, when this whole pandemic broke out, when December 2019 was happening, what was in your head, considering the fact that I'm guessing you had already learned a lot by that point? So maybe you anticipated it. Maybe you know what's coming. What do you think is happening in the world right now, sir?
So I think that if you look at cosmology, the whole cosmic game, in that Bharat has a very special role. I'm looking at from our lens. But Bharat has not honored that role. It is not performing that role. It is not capable of performing that role. It is very highly polluted, corrupted from bottom to top. We can talk about it. I'm very disillusioned with the caliber of Indian institutions, whether it is this government or old government. Generally, the what you expect of a tradition, which is the Rashtra, that is supposed to lead the world forward, the Vishwa Guru. The world is not being led by Bharat Vishwa Guru at all. So that is one thing you have to put aside. You cannot look at the world and say, okay, we are Vishwa Guru. That is how we look at geopolitics. Not the case. It ought to be the case. But what ought to be is not necessarily what is. So if you look at it in a very pragmatic way, India is in trouble. Forget being Vishwa Guru, India is in trouble for its own existence. And this is where the revolution of artificial intelligence is going to push it forward faster. India was sort of hodgepodge. We are doing very well. Then we take a step back. Then we take a step forward. But what has happened is the best way to understand what is happening with AI is to see what happened with the industrial revolution a couple hundred years ago, when Britain started taking factories and electrifying them, which the manual factories were not able to keep up with. And this industrial revolution of Britain made it into a world power, allowed it to colonize advanced civilizations like India. And then France also joined the industrial revolution. The two of them were competing. They were at war with each other, but each of them becoming highly industrialized and using that to colonize other continents. So entire world history for a couple of hundred years was influenced by the technological breakthrough called the Industrial Revolution. So what is now happening is another industrial revolution. The AI is considered the new industrial revolution. It is going to change the world politics into haves and have-nots, just like the previous industrial revolution. Britain and France became the haves, the powerful countries. All others became colonized, became have-nots, and became ruled. Now I think you will find the same thing. USA and China are equivalent to the Britain and France in the sense that they are the duopoly competing against each other in a Cold War. Maybe there'll be a hot war also, just like Britain and France had. But while fighting each other, they're also fighting over who gets what colonies. So US has its sphere of influence. China has its sphere of influence. Not only Pakistan, but pretty much all of Africa and many other places China has captured. So I see the geopolitics today as the beginning of a new industrial revolution. We are in this decade, as much is happening with AI revolution as happened in 30, 40 years of the industrial revolution, because the speed of change is faster. So, what is going to happen is US and China are going to kind of, while, at tension with each other, they're going to also carve out much of the world. And where does that leave India is a very disturbing thought. Because besides US and China at the top, there are other societies, other civilizations that will be able to defend themselves. They won't be world powers, like Japan, like Israel, like Russia, like EU. I mean, they're not going to run the world and control the world like at the top tier. But at the second tier, they're certainly able to survive. They have enough to be able to survive. India is not only absent in the top tier of US and China, India is also not in the second tier where it's strong enough to survive. So India has, what is that due to? That is due to the fact that there are breaking India forces within India. India has the worst kind of internal breaking forces. America doesn't have breaking America forces. Japan doesn't have breaking Japan forces. China takes, they don't tolerate any breaking China forces. They may have, but they don't tolerate. So, India is the only big country with such a large amount of energy spent on just keeping it together. And these forces that are internal, some of them give their allegiance to the Middle East as a religion. Some of them give it to Europe or Vatican or somewhere for allegiance. Some of them give it to the left-wing human rights, which come out of USA and Europe. And those are the intellectual maa-baap, and they are driving the show in India. So India has multiple foreign nexuses. And that is what I wrote in my book, Breaking India, which is like over a decade old now. That book became very important, and a lot of people got their inspiration from that book, Breaking India, which explained how the Breaking India at the physical level of violence and insurrection and separatism happens later. But before, what happens is the intellectual breakup, the emotional breakup. We are not part of the India. We are part of this community, and India has suppressed us. India has abused us. India is the reason we are poor. So whether it is a minority religion, whether it is a minority caste, whether it is men versus women, whether it is urban India versus rural India, whatever the divisiveness might be, this divisiveness is being manipulated from foreign nexuses. So that linkage I did after many years of study of those foreign nexuses. I went to their headquarters in USA. I went to their headquarters in Europe. I did a lot of that investigative work, forensic work, and I published it in a large book. But even though the book is several hundred pages, 600 pages, the point is that I have thousands of pages of backup documents on what these guys are up to. Now, 10 years later, that whole Breaking India scenario is upgraded. India hasn't caught up with these people, but they have moved to a next level. We talk about George Soros is doing this and X and Y are doing this. I have, in this AI work, I have been tracking large number of such people, George Soros being only just one of many, but there are many even worse, dangerous ones. And their activities within India through their influence, through the people they're funding, through the leaders they're cultivating, they are taking breaking India to another level. And this is very, very dangerous. This is why I'm writing about the AI revolution and its special threat to India.
History repeats itself, so. And in the same way that divide and rule brought us down once, I think we're at the brink of divide and rule bringing us down again. But say if you had to look at it with an optimistic mindset, can we undo this divide and rule mentality somehow? Or is the pandemic undoing it? Is it bringing us all back together? What do you think is happening? Because I still want to look at it with a positive mindset and ask myself that what is the solution to this problem? How do we actually take India at least to that second rung, if not the first rung?
Excellent, excellent. The understanding the problem, the whole purpose is then to lead to what to do about it, solutions. So one of the things we have to do is defensive and then offensive, the two parts to it. So as far as defensive is concerned, the AI revolution, AI requires two ingredients. It requires several ingredients like semiconductors and all that, which we are not good at. But two of the ingredients India has a lot, India should control. One is the brain power of the AI programmers, the software people. And India is exporting raw talent rather than using them to build our own intellectual property. Rather than building our own patents and our own technology that becomes Indian, made in India technology that we can export, what we are doing is selling raw brains. So Sundar Pichai is a great guy, but he's not working for India, he's working for Google. And Google may well be like the East India Company. In fact, I have a section called the Return of the East India Company. So
wow.
Some of these mega businesses that are so powerful, they are beyond the control of governments. They're not only fighting the Indian government, they're fighting the US government, the European Union. And so the governments versus private industry has become a big story Indians don't know about. Indians feel that if we complain about Twitter, to pata nahi kya ho jayega. But Twitter is under inquiry. There are lawsuits against Google, against Facebook. There are antitrust cases in the US to break them up, in Europe also. So, one of the things that India has to do on the offensive is to monitor these groups, their use of data. Their use of data is what allows the AI algorithms to become smart, because without the data, the algorithms cannot learn. It's like, a child needs to learn how things work in this house by looking at examples, by watching people, by looking at the reaction and understanding how the behavior is and being able to predict. So the same way the machine learning happens by looking at a lot of examples of Indian people's behavior, who is right-wing, who is left-wing, who fights whom, who can be made to fight somebody, who can be made into a separatist, who can be made into a Punjab farmer that will be opposed to the government. So they are monitoring and keeping track of individual profiles. So they have a profile on Ranveer, they have a profile on Rajiv, they have a profile on, Sonia Gandhi, on Modi, all these kind of things. And they're looking at not only your social media footprint, but your Gmail, your emails, your messages to each other, what you buy, your orders online. This eavesdropping and this surveillance is so sophisticated. And this is feeding the artificial intelligence models to map your brain and your thinking. So this India can stop. India can, the government that is furthest ahead in doing this is EU. And India can learn from EU. India is doing some of these things, lip service, there's a lot of debate, a lot of discussion. Some laws have been enacted, very little being enforced. And I've written a lot about how our people are actually selling out. A lot of Niti Aayog documents, Niti Aayog plans are actually drafted by Google. Imagine it's like the Raja inviting the East India Company to draft his strategy. Saying कि आप ही माँ बाप हैं, आप ही को ज़्यादा पता है, आप ही, you know how to govern, you know how you are more civilized and more sophisticated, and you have all this industrial technology. So you only draft a plan on how to run my kingdom. So, the way the East India Company was outsourcing, had been outsourced the operation of the governments by many kings. You're finding that some of these modern AI companies are beginning to take over not only simple things like messaging and whom you like and whom you don't like, but they are figuring out what you will speak on COVID, what you're allowed to speak, what you're not allowed to speak. More than 50% of the videos I put up, and I put up 2 videos a week, and we have a pipeline with a lot of them recorded. More than 50% of the videos I put up get flagged as politically controversial, politically sensitive by these guys. And then my team has to go fight them and escalate it and get them to change it. By then, we've lost the momentum. And the reason they're doing it on purpose, because there is a bias built into these international organizations that are doing all this mischief. So first, India, rather than exporting raw brains to these people, and these people use Indian brains to develop intellectual property, patents, a lot of technology, which they then export back to India. They export all this back to India, and we pay so much royalty, so much money to buy these guys, buy their products. And it is these companies that are worth trillions of dollars today, unprecedented. It's because of Indian brains. Indian brains have helped Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter, Apple, Google. Indian brains have helped the U.S. Defense Department. So many defense contractors got Indian brains in NASA, in IBM. And you will find that when India buys the Rafale jet, why it buys the Rafale jet? Because it's got this technology of multiple targets, and it can do the job of 50 pilots sitting with only one pilot actually being needed to do the job of 50. It's doing all of that with the technology. A lot of it is AI technology. But when you go there and look at who's developing all this technology, you'll find a lot of Indians here. So, हमारे जो brains हैं, those are not being used for India. They are on a personal level, they're making good money. I'm very proud and very happy for Sundar Pichai. But don't think he's helping India. Don't think that he is a sign of Indian technology. He's a sign of American technology. He's part of the system. He's invested in it. They're making him into a rich guy, famous guy. And having an Indian face in front is a very convenient thing. It's a very convenient thing. So these are sort of a new kind of colonization going on, which Indians need to understand, because we don't know how this colonization works, and we think it's actually good for us because they've hired some of our people. So that is one thing India can end, is just giving away all its talent rather than creating projects in India which Indians can follow. Second is data. The second thing that AI needs, without which AI cannot function, is data. They call it big data, which means that you go to Kumbh Mela and you can do surveillance on tens of millions of people, what jati, where they're from, what is their social demographic, do they feel exploited, who likes whom, who hates whom, building a very complex social map of political problems, tensions with each other, religious tensions with each other, and building this map for such a huge part of India. All the districts and villages are represented in the Kumbh Mela. So that's like an example of how big data is being gathered. Big data is being gathered by these people based on looking at the financial, all the financial information in India is being monitored by American companies that are looking at credit rating. Your credit rating is in the hands of American companies. So they know all your transactions. They know your vulnerabilities. They know whether you are a person that can be bribed because you got a problem, or whether you are against somebody, whether you are fond of somebody because maybe they've given you a loan. So the big data is financial. It is transactional based on what you are buying and selling. It is messages, that social media messages. It's the videos, what you like, what you don't like. It's all your behavior, not only online, but even offline. A lot of eavesdropping going on. So India should, first of all, India should stop this, export of raw brains that go in and big data that is then used to create AI, sophisticated products and technologies, which India then has to buy at a huge price. So this is a very solid thing. Then later I can discuss, if you're interested, what are the positive projects India should do. What are the projects, besides saying कि उनको नहीं करना, we're going to stop them, okay, but what should we do? What should we do with our big data? What should we do with the lacks of talented people, which we're not doing today? So those are some of the ideas that I want to bring out, and I'm bringing out a second volume and a third volume on my AI.
I'm so glad you're bringing up big data. It's one of those topics I've been dying to bring up on the show for a while. I also read somewhere that whoever controls the algorithm is actually controlling the power structure in the world. And many of the world's governments don't even understand this completely, because possibly the people who are running the governments aren't, honestly, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, they are not tech savvy. So they're not kind of foreseeing how the power is actually going to shift to these privately owned organizations like Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc. And while we shit all over China, there is some stuff to admire that country for, which is that they were able to see the future a little bit. Maybe in the 90s, the 2000s, they were able to predict that this will happen. Therefore, they didn't allow a Google and a Facebook to establish itself in China, and they had their own government controlled websites and companies.
Perfect. Perfect. So I've written a lot on this also. Indian outsourcing was a good way to create a middle class by renting brains. But China also created its middle class by renting cheap factory labor. They did manufacturing, cheap factory labor. Big difference is China decided that between 25% and 50% of all the profits made by renting out cheap factory labor, all of that money should be reinvested in Chinese own technology to compete against the Americans. So they would copy the American who set up a factory there. They would copy this idea and they would create their own technology, and they would invest the profits they're making to build their own technology for the future. Now, Indian TCS should have done that. This Infosys should have done that. All these companies that made tons of money, they just took that money and urowed it and made good share price, and a lot of people made money. Suppose 50%, or let's say even 25%, or let's say even 10, 15% of all the billions of dollars that the Indian software exporters made. Suppose way back from the 90s, they had been putting it into a fund to invest in future technologies, futurist technology. See, China, because they did it, now China is number one in many parts of AI. And in some parts, they are number two to the US. They are number one in solar panels. They are number one in robotics. They have more robots than any other country. They have more solar panel market share than anyone else. They're catching up with US in semiconductors. If you look at avionics, if you look at so many fields, and AI means a cluster of technologies. It's not just one technology. There is a pure AI, but it is connected with all these other technologies, and that's the way I use the term. So if you look at their 8 or 10 major technologies that are under this AI umbrella, China invested in all of them. They made very good bets. This is where government vision is needed. You bring government and industry together. You bring your industrialists in line and tell them, okay, you can all make a lot of money, but this is what you got to do. Yeah. So the rules of the big game were made by the Chinese that, okay, we will send our students to America. And when the difference between Chinese students and Indian students coming to America is 95% of the Chinese students go back. And Indian students, most of them stay. So as an individual, Indian is doing well. Chinese is more doing well as a collective. As a Rashtra, they're doing much better. Indians have a lot of billionaires here, there, both famous ho gaye log. In every field, Indians are doing very well. But that is not helping India as a nation. So China did what you are saying. They got the benefit of outsourcing and quick, easy money, but they also reinvested long term. They did not just do short-term jugaad. I think the Indians got stuck in short-term jugaad. कि मेरे पास ये quarterly profit इतना है, annual profit इतना है, आपका इतना है. So they didn't think कि I'm going to sacrifice short-term profit because we're doing well. I'll sacrifice a little bit of short-term profit and put it into long-term research, जिसका 5-10 साल के बाद फायदा होगा. And India didn't do that. So India does not have the technologies. And yet India has all the talent. If you ask India, okay, now where is such and such? There's something called GPT-3, which is an AI technology. And there are GPT lookalikes, 3 or 4 competing, products like that. China is making its own. US has some. US government, Defense Department is making its own. India doesn't have anything like that. So when you say, where is our GPT-3 technology, they will name individuals who are smart. But then those individuals are working for Microsoft. They are working for those foreign outfits. You can't say that belongs. Even in India, most patents that are being filed in this kind of technology are being filed by Microsoft India, Google India. It is the Western people who have set up shop in India to leverage the Indian brain. And we are very happy कि वो लोग आए हैं, jobs create कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, फायदा तो हो रहा है उन लोगों को, no problem. But every place where there is a Microsoft India, China में उसके बगल में उन्होंने अपना भी लगा दिया है, their own, और वो वहाँ से knowledge निकाल कर they are creating their own. So we don't have to do it dishonestly. We could do it honestly also. But we have not wanted to do that because that's long term. That is, investing in technology and intellectual property. क्या फायदा हम अमेरिकन से ले लेंगे, whatever the Americans give us, we'll take it. That kind of mentality of dependence is not good. And you mentioned that the American these technology companies are becoming too powerful. I would point out the American government has a parallel in the Defense Department. There's something called DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. DARPA is the inventor of internet. What it used to be called DARPA Net, then became internet. DARPA has invented fiber optics. They were responsible for Bell Labs, semiconductors, inventing the transistor. So DARPA has invented so many technologies. And now in AI and all these new things, private companies are doing it, but American government, Defense Department, CIA, they are also into this. And the Chinese are into it. Chinese are into it in a very big way. Chinese actually are also building the biggest data, big data on genetics, on every individual genetics, Indian genetics of this culture, that of this group, that group, African, every village, all this genetic mapping, which allows them to make diseases which are customized for a certain type of gene. The disease will not affect people in general, but affect people of this gene, or it will affect everybody, but protect the people of this gene. This kind of genetic warfare, and then solutions based on genetics, coming up with solutions to medical problems. China is at the cutting edge of building a map of the human genetics by country, by type of people, race, whatever. So this is where India is not a player, and India needs to become a player, because हमारे पास brains हैं, और we have data like nobody, because we have so much diversity. We have genetic diversity, we have cultural diversity. People are taking our data and making things out of it. We ought to be doing that. So I think the positive solution would be government should say, okay, all the tech companies, you should start putting away 10% into futurist technologies. After 3 years, you'll be required to put away 20%. And maybe thereafter, we will make it like 30%. So you sacrifice your short-term profit. So what on Sensex if you are not always doing great, but you'll be still doing very well. But a certain amount of your profit will go into futuristic things. And maybe these futuristic things, government should give them a tax break. Maybe government should say you'll have a tax holiday for 10 years. You invest your profit in these list of technologies. They give a list. These are sensitive to national security. These should not be in foreign hands. These should be in our hands. Government should do that. And then government should say, we'll procure from India. Make in India, we'll procure. Why? Right now, government is inviting all these foreign digital giants, American companies, to build their strategy. Because government doesn't know if Niti Aayog has to tell the Prime Minister what should be the strategy, and they don't know what to do. They'll call their friend in Google and say, "Acha, bhaiya, humko bacha do." And Google will say, "Acha, hum bacha denge. You do me a favor, I'll do you a favor." So what is happening is that India is indirectly almost sold out. It's at the intellectual level. This is not very good.
Yep. I think the big problem that encapsulates everything you said pretty much is Indian brain drain. And brain drain is a bigger problem now than it's ever been. If there's even 10 kids who are listening to this who are contemplating going abroad, 10 really smart kids who are contemplating going abroad, and then they change their mind because of this podcast, I feel the job will be done. Stay back, build here. I also remember being pissed off at the concept of brain drain in college. Over time, I kind of made peace with it because I realized everyone has their own journeys. But now, once I've learned geopolitics, I'm starting to get a little upset about the concept of brain drain again, because I feel like Indian families celebrate job placements and stability and just good salaries way more than they should celebrate being able to create jobs and being able to go aggressive in your own career and being able to chase instability, seek discomfort, as the internet calls it. Indian families should start celebrating these concepts, and then you'll see a reduction in brain drain. Stop celebrating the fact that some Indian has become a CEO in some foreign company and start celebrating the fact that Oh wow, here's Zerodha, a bootstrapped Indian company which has made it big. Here's Kunal Shah's Cred, which is his second company after Freecharge. Celebrate Indian entrepreneurs more and change culture that way. That's what I believe will be a part of the solution. But sir, I also believe that there are a lot of young Indian kids in cities who are now not looking at, okay, I've done my engineering, now I'm going to go to USA to study. The kind of thinking of the country as a whole again.
Good. I'm very happy to know that. And I do know that. And some of them write to me, call me, and they want to be mentored. They want ideas, and I'm always there. This needs to be supported by big investments. So, the thing is this venture capital. If you look at venture capital in India for these these high technology companies, majority of the Indian venture capital going into things like AI comes from Chinese and American venture capital firms. Chinese have been blocked to some extent, not entirely. They are still operating through Middle East and through Singapore. Indirectly, they're operating. But many of the new investments have been stopped. Old investments continue. And the Americans are very active in bringing all their venture capital skills. So the company may be an Indian entrepreneur, पर जो उसके investor है वो Kleiner Perkins from America or some big venture capital firm, whatever. The point is that ultimately they are buying him out. His dream is to build a company where his shares will be worth 100 million and the venture capitalists will buy him out, or Google will buy him out. Lot of Indian companies which are run by Indian entrepreneurs in India, the venture money comes from either private firms of the United States or somewhere else, or from venture capital firms, international banks, and so on. Now, why isn't India able to put its own venture capital? It is not, we're not talking about thousands of crores. I mean, yes, we are talking about some thousands of crores, big projects also. But we're also talking about in the hundreds of crores, little ventures. India should create a very large number of local sources of funding. Why don't states do that? एक तो central government को क्यों blame करना है? अरे भाई state वाले, they could take a certain amount of state funding. They could do some way to raise some funds and make it available to these entrepreneurs, the kind of people you're talking about. I'm very proud of them, young people who want to do this, but they need help, and they need financial help. They need to be, first of all, they need to be mega projects. जैसे ISRO, okay, we are going to be among the top 2 or 3 in the world in putting up satellites, in doing this, that. And then you look at an example like John F. Kennedy said in the early 60s that by the end of this decade we'll put a man on the moon. Actually, USA did not have a program to do any such thing. They had no program. They had their whole goal at that time when he said it was to go into orbit only. But he set that goal. And sure enough, by the end of the decade, Americans walked on the moon. So, you put these big challenges. So India needs to take a challenge and say, okay, we are going to create a competitor to GPT-3. And that's a technical thing. We can discuss some other time. But we are going to create a competitor to GPT-3, which is at least as good, maybe so many times better. And we're going to do it in 3 years or 5 years. So they should set goals like that. And this requires so many $1 billion. We're going to create a team. So आ जाओ जितने भी हमारे bright लोग हैं, come join us. This is like the equivalent of the American space program. What is called nowadays is called the moonshot, which means that a moonshot is something where you're going after the moon, and this is such a high target. Okay? Even if you did not succeed in the process of doing it, many inventions will be made. When America had this moonshot, that is how they miniaturized and came up with semiconductors. All the semiconductors you have today, which is miniaturizing on and on. The American space program did a lot of that. American space program created many spin-off technologies, which are now the world whole tech system is, would be impossible without those technologies. So when you India needs to do its moonshot. India needs to have 3 or 4, and I have project ideas. Then India needs to have a few moonshot scale technology projects to capture the imagination of its young people, give a huge amount of funding, and the benefits of intellectual property that will come. It will take 5 to 10 years. It is not next election ka fayda nahi hoga, but the benefits you will get by the end of this decade will be huge. India needs to do that. I do not see that vision. The only community in India, and I've talked to all kind of people in the context of my book, the only community in India which understands this strategic thinking are the defense people. I feel very happy when I talk to Navy people, Army people, Air Force people. They get it like that because, they're very practical and they see what's happening in the world. They get it that, we better do our own technologies. We can't just go on buying Raphael type things forever and ever because it's costing more and more money. You look at the cost per MiG-21. Then it went to Mirage. Then it went to, all these other Jaguar, Mirage, all these kind of things we bought. Ab karte, final one is Raphael. It's many orders of magnitude more cost per plane. You'll be surprised if you look at what was the cost per plane for MiG and then Mirage and then Jaguar and then whatever. You look at all of them and you will see the cost per plane is going up. It is going up faster than GDP is going up. So, India's having to put out more and more sacrifice to get a small number of planes. With the money, we could get hundreds of MiGs, and dozens of other planes afterwards. We can get only chota mota few Raphaels, but we need them because otherwise we'll be finished. So for India's survival, both external threat and internal threats from breaking India forces, India has to struggle very hard. And I don't see enough people really understanding the brink of serious problems that India is on right now.
Yeah. Again, at its core, sir, I believe it's a matter of leadership and direction.
Yes.
You need a core of 100 really motivated, visionary people. And we see that, with the young corporate leaders of the country. I have a friend called Mr. Ashok Ramchand. He's a mentor to me. I have another mentor called Mrs. Radhika Gupta. She's at Edelweiss. I see the way these people think versus, say, an older CEO in the country, and the thinking is different. Age 60 versus age 40, Indian, the thinking is different. Age 40 versus age 28, which is my age, I see the thinking is different. And then when I compare people my age to the Gen Zs, the 18, 19-year-olds, I won't say that they're completely motivated and driven yet, but a lot of that potential is there. They're very intelligent and they're able to understand what's happening and they have a worldview. So I feel the Gen Z of India actually holds the keys. The kids who are in college listening to this podcast now, absorbing all this information, when they are out in the real world as professionals, they will understand the concept of venture capital better. They'll understand the concepts of geopolitics better.
Yes.
So that's my big hope, sir. I still feel we are going in a good direction overall as a nation in terms of intellect. Again, the beautiful thing is, yes, our education system is highly criticized, but we're still smart people. And now we're starting to learn from the internet, hopefully from podcasts like this one, sir. So overall, yeah.
No, ठीक कह रहे हैं. Overall, what you're saying is the brains, younger people got better. They're smarter at it. And they're getting into power at a younger age. This is very encouraging. But I have a few comments on this. One comment is that India spends too much time and energy on politics of elections. So the people in government, so first of all, the ministers are political appointees. They're not subject matter expert. Koi agriculture minister ban gaya, koi railway ban gaya. These guys don't really know that industry. पहले somebody may have been agriculture minister, तो फिर कहीं और जाके कहीं defense minister बन गया या कोई home minister बन गया. They're just swinging around like the ministry is anybody can any politician can run a ministry. What happens then is that the IAS babus are really running the show because the IAS babu has been in that ministry all his life, and even he may not be a subject matter expert. He may be in some ministry without being technically qualified, but at least he's there. He knows the bureaucracy. These IAS guys got their own ecosystem, and it's very difficult to have outsiders get in. And so what is going on is they close ranks, they're running the show. Minister comes, he really doesn't know a whole lot. I mean, he'll make some speeches and they'll give him some lip service, ki, haan, hum wahi kar rahe hain. But at the end, they'll do, it's the IAS running the show. I mean, I have been pushed around from this minister to that minister. Top minister level people who are union ministers and all have heard me over the last few years. I have given dozens of presentations, hundreds of PowerPoint slides, many proposals, zero outcome. Because in terms of lip service, they're very nice to me. They're wonderful people. At some point, they bring in the IS guys, the guys who are head of various departments to kind of help me out. Those people give a run around, ye proposal do, yahan likho, wo karo. I'm not going to suck up and kiss ass. I don't have time for that. I'm not a industrialist looking to make some money for myself and get some license and get some favors. I am doing Desh Seva, and they ought to be helping me. I am doing their job. I in fact tell them that, look, you are making it look like I have to submit this to you, that to you, as if you are doing me a favor. But let me tell you, I'm doing your job for you because I'm not paid. I don't expect to be paid. I don't want to be paid. I don't need to be paid. You are a servant of the citizens of this country. It is your job to run this issue, to solve this problem. You don't have the know-how. I'm willing to give you the know-how for free, but you have to treat me right. You cannot make me run around like I'm some Ambani guy sitting in Delhi who wants some contract or who wants this access, or I'm some industrialist who wants some deal. I'm not looking for any deal of a profit kind at all. I'm looking to be the person who gives you know-how, and but you have to allow me to do that.
Can I be ruthlessly honest with you about one point?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be very straight up with you here.
Yeah.
I love your intent, sir. But considering the people at the top at this time in history, I just feel your timeline is not matching with what you're trying to do. At least from the outside, seeming like that. And again, I feel like if we were having this conversation 20 years later, everything you'd be saying would probably be applied.
In a sense, I'm ahead of my time. I was ahead of my time when I gave up for-profit in the 90s and said India needs a civilizational voice. In the halls of the Ivy Leagues, and I became that one man to go and challenge them. Took a lot of heat, lot of nonsense came to me. Nobody defended me, not the Indian consulate, not the gurus, not the political people. They said let him fight on his own. I had to do all this hard work, dirty work on my own, not for myself, but for the sake of the country. And so it wasn't easy to get support. Now there are a lot of people out there become activists because the groundwork has been made, because certain basic premises have been established, whether we are destroying and knocking down the Aryan invasion theory, whether we are knocking down this whole exaggerated that the caste case against all our culture and all that, whether we are defending that our civilization's track record of respecting women, whether we are defending minority rights in India, whatever, I laid out the issues. I said, this is the naksha, this is the map, these are the 5 or 6 or 8 top issues on which they are attacking us. This is how we have to counterattack. These are the centers where the fight is coming from. These are the nexuses specializing in this and this kind of research. And I've done the same for the next wave of attacks. The next wave of attacks, which is going to be technologically far more sophisticated, is happening, is already started happening. Our people haven't caught up to this. There are investors in tech and investors in big data in India who've got a portfolio of investments and ventures that are actually aligned with very nasty breaking India forces. So I have that also. So, the thing is that the youth and the futurist thinking young people, by the time they come to power and all this happens, you're talking about 15, 20 years, we don't have that time. We may not survive. India, I will tell you, China, Pakistan hyphenated, with all this Afghanistan becoming a vacuum of power with US withdrawing. This is going to be taking up more and more share of Indian GDP to survive. And India will need...
When you say survive, sir, what do you mean? As an economic power, or do you mean like physically?
I mean physically as a sovereign power. There'll be more Kashmirs, both, whether it's Northeast, whether it is in the central India, all these Maoist things, whether it is somewhere on the fringe, somewhere else. You will see the breaking India forces becoming empowered more and more. I used to say this, I used to go and visit Jamia Millia in the 90s. And I was telling my friends, wait and see, this is going to become a dangerous place. Because what I discovered is in Jamia Millia, they have a center for Dalit studies. I said, why the hell they have Center for Dalit Studies meant for, it's okay, theek hai, Center for Islam, all these kind of things, I respect it, love it. They invited me to give a keynote address in, in one of their events. And I was walking around the hall and I was seeing that the labels on the offices of scholars and what kind of centers they've created, what kind of, this Center for Feminism, Center for, human rights of minorities, all these loaded with agenda, meaning, and getting foreign funding for that. I was telling this in the 90s. This is very dangerous stuff, sir. Of course, under intellectual freedom, you can't stop it, but you can start countering it. You should create your own centers where you are also taking similar topics and producing people who can argue. I cannot, as a one man, go argue against all these people. So whether it is JNU, whether it is now this Ashoka University, which is pretty bad in Delhi, and whether it is Jamia Millia, these things have been allowed to happen right under our nose. Nobody is taking a serious long-term view. Everybody trying to figure out what's in it for me. मैं कुछ जुगाड़ करूँगा, मैं famous बन जाऊँगा, I'll get ahead. That is, you need people who are willing to stick their neck out, get out of their comfort zone, take the personal risk, invest all they got, tan man dhan, and not want anything back. You need people like that, and we've had people like that during the freedom struggle. So we need such people.
So could you elaborate a little more on what could possibly go wrong? From what you said, I understood that you mean a fragmentation of India will take place where the country might get divided into more countries, or pieces of the country will be taken away and absorbed into other countries. And that's honestly something that a lot of people need to wrap their brains around. The international borders that we know of today have just been around for like 100 years or so. What was happening before the year 1900? What was happening before the year 1500? What was happening in human history of 2 lakh years? There was no such concept as borders. So this border of India that we all see in our geography textbooks, it's actually a very new concept. This border of Pakistan you see is a new concept. And it's very likely that these will change further. And it's just such a larger than life concept that we are not taught is possible in school, but we're probably on the brink of it. Therefore, the question to you is, you said that as an economic power and as a geographical power, we might take a hit. But could you elaborate a little more on that? So what can actually happen?
Yeah, so I think China can take over the mountain areas. China is getting ready for it. They have built these high-speed rails all the way to the border, whether it is Arunachal area, Bhutan area, Ladakh area, all these different areas, Sikkim area. And even though 50% of the whole northern border is neutral because of Nepal, not even counting Nepal, the rest of the border, India has the largest, let me give you a statistic. India has the world's largest hostile border. In the number of miles with Pakistan and China and, all of these different areas, which are hostile, where there is a territorial claim by an enemy, where there is armed forces of the enemy, nuclear powers. No other country in the world has that many 1,000 kilometers of hostile borders. So this is a huge risk that is depleting India's GDP, depleting if India didn't have to put so many troops in Kashmir, the GDP compounded growth rate would have been such that today's per capita income would have been substantially higher, maybe 2-3 times what it is. If you were to simulate and say, okay, the GDP would have been so many percent higher than it was. So we are paying the price of this very expensive protection of our sovereignty. We have to export so much manpower, software manpower. Why? Because there are 2 things we buy. One is we buy petroleum. Thank God the price of oil has been stable, but we spend a lot of our foreign exchange buying 2 things, weapons and petroleum. And so without these 2, you need the energy to run your industry and run your life, and you need the weapons to protect you from enemies. So, it's like we're on a treadmill. So we have to keep exporting. A few years from now, we have to export twice as many people because each person brings in so much foreign exchange, or uski zarurat hai, because we need to protect ourselves. So this is not a stable, this kind of a sovereignty is not stable, where it depends on foreign weapons, without which we can't succeed. because our weapons have not been able to come up at the rate at which China is advanced. And China is giving it. So not only China is threatening to take over the mountain areas and these mountain areas where the rivers are. So mountain area is not just some random nostalgia and romantic mountain. That's where the rivers are. Whether it is the Brahmaputra, whether it is the all this whole, the northeast rivers that come through Ladakh and Kashmir. 3 of the 5 Punjab rivers are being given to Pakistan, including biggest rivers. Small amount of the water is coming to India only. So the takeover of the mountains has huge implications for the economy, plus destabilizing. And then imagine if on top of that, they were to also take over Nepal. What would India do? Whether it's a friendly government, whether it's an unfriendly government, like that, they could have a military coup. One day they could say, this government came over and this government has invited China to protect them. And so overnight we sent, so many divisions of our military. What is India going to do? Is India going to attack? Is America bothered? America is only bothered about its interests. America will do a protest. Maybe they'll put some sanction. Maybe they'll have a complaint. And India will have emotional kind of field day in the UN, bashing up China. But at the end of the day, the ground reality is not going to change. I'm a pragmatic guy. I'm looking at what's the ground reality. I'm not looking at कि उसकी इज्जत बिगाड़ दी, उसको हमने insult कर दिया. That victory is useless victory. So India does not have the hard power to counter China. China can pretty much do a lot of damage to India. If they were to tomorrow, just ask yourself, if they were to tomorrow find some excuse, silly political excuse, and march into Nepal, I believe it's a matter of time before they'll do that. The political wind of Nepal shifts from pro-China to pro-India to neutral to pro-China to pro-India ever since the Hindu kingdom was wiped out. When the Hindu kingdom was there and when the Hindu kingdom was in trouble, the Indians did not take it seriously. The Indians thought that this king is useless fellow, he's violating human rights, democracy is better for them, and this and that. So the left wing, the Maoists, they came up with all this. They whipped up all this stuff, got rid of the Hindu king, and now you have Nepal that will never be stable. It'll be unstable like Indian politics. It'll go from one party to another back and forth. China will find its moment. So if you look at the whole mountain area, even without this Nepal factor, but then with the Nepal factor getting even more out of control, you have a catastrophic problem. And then you look at the second aspect, they are definitely arming Pakistan. They are definitely taking over more and more ownership of Pakistan through investments. Now, China has got such a large amount of money invested in Pakistan, and the Pakistan army is trying to protect the Chinese installations. And there are terrorists in Pakistan who are blowing up Chinese installations. So China, latest in the last week, put out a notice that maybe we'll have to protect our installations with our own military. Now, what a statement. What a statement that having made so much investment in Pakistan, we may have to militarily, using missiles, using our technology, using surveillance, because whenever the big corridor in Pakistan, that is all Chinese technology going all the way from Tibet to the Arabian Sea, that whole corridor is totally surveillance with the Chinese surveillance. All these cameras, we got lakhs of cameras there. All this surveillance equipment is there. So China is actually pretty much in the guts of Pakistan. And ISI is happy because they feel that they have a joint enemy, gives them a joint purpose. So I do not think that India can defeat Pakistan. Do not rule out the possibility that it may be the other way around, because Pakistan will provide boots on the ground, which China does not want to provide. China will provide the money and the technology and the hardware. So already some Chinese fighter jets are being assembled in Pakistan. I don't know if you know that. Chinese fighter jets are being assembled in Pakistan. So Pakistan is gradually from medium tech to higher tech and higher tech. Thanks to China, it's happening. And China will use them as useful idiots. There is something called useful idiots. Matlab, the person is an idiot, but you can use him. So it's not going to help Pakistan, but they are useful idiots. They first were, they had sold out to the Americans, putting bases there. Then they sold out to, Saudis, so then now they sold out to Chinese. So they're always selling out, renting their country. Pakistan is for rent. So Chinese is a good landlord, Chinese is the latest landlord. So I feel that these kind of problems from the outside are very dangerous and they're not going away in the next decade. Then you compound it with internal problems. You see what's happening in Bangladesh, spill over to West Bengal, and its implications all over the Northeast. What is ISI doing? What are these foreign religious and political thought mass migrations going on? The India from West Bengal east all the way to Northeast is a very vulnerable area. It's an area that could be worse than today's Kashmir. It could happen. It could happen within this decade. So, so I feel that these are some examples of the threats to Indian sovereignty. And India at one time had this ironclad protection from Soviet Union, which is no longer the case. India tried to make friends with China, that we are this Hindi Chini bhai bhai, you are Buddhist, we are Asian, jhula karenge, hug denge and all that. That did not work because we did not read them properly. We were very naive in understanding them. And now India is saying, okay, now nobody else left, so America humko adopt karo, Quad ban gaya and all that. But those Americans, whether it is Republican, Democrat, point is American, like all countries, looking after themselves, and they will utilize whatever alliance works. So India is not like a long-term permanent. See, the long-term permanent allies. One is Israel because of religious reasons, because of the whole Christian support for Judaism. There is something called Zionism, Christian Zionism. Christian Zionists are people who are Christians, but they believe in the integrity, safety, and future glory of Israel as part of their biblical interpretation. So there is no similar thing for India that there is for Israel. And the second area which they are will never give up is with Britain, because Britain is the founding fathers of India, all these English culture, English civilization that came to the Americas in the 1600s, and that has permeated. There is something called Anglo-American philosophy, Anglo-American thought system. That means Anglo, the British side, and the American are a kind of a worldview. So United States has those as permanent civilizational allies, you might say, for civilizational reasons. The rest are for concurrent political benefit, mutual benefit. You do an alliance with this guy or you do an alliance with that guy. There are so many battleships. Where do we place them? Do we place them in the Pacific or Indian Ocean or here or there? Do we allocate more for NATO? Do we allocate for fighting North Korea and help South Korea there? Do we help the South China Seas and protect Taiwan? I mean, or do we protect India from its northern water being taken away? India is one of those pieces always being moved around on the game board in America. So India is very precariously placed, and this I worry about a lot, and I do not find enough people in India thinking about it except defense people. I'm very proud of those guys. I know some of them. I talk to them online. I also talk to them offline. A lot of it, they want offline discussion. I'm more than happy whenever they want, because I think they are the right people to understand this threat.
So while I have a zillion questions after every single answer of yours, I'm trying to curate this as an introduction piece to you, because I'm sure you'll be back on the show. Therefore, let's talk about something that's relevant. We had someone called Mr. Abhijit Chavda on the show. I believe even you know him, and you guys have interacted in the recent past as well. He is also very fascinated and into geopolitics in general. And he keeps bringing up this concept about COVID being a man-made virus, COVID-19 being a man-made virus. And earlier on in this episode, you spoke about how the Chinese have succeeded in mapping out the human genome in terms of they have a genetic mapping of how an Indian gene is, how an African gene is, how an American gene is. Therefore, they can kind of curate biological weapons that only affect a certain part of our population. So the obvious question, again, this is because you study geopolitics in such a wide way, and I'm sure you've also delved a little bit into bioweapons in your studies. I'd love to know about biological warfare in general, the future of it. The obvious question is also the coronavirus, is it man-made? Is it being deployed in order to pull up China's GDP while the rest of the world's GDP is kind of plateauing?
You know, it's very interesting. Very early in the pandemic, in more than one of my talks on YouTube, I actually raised this. In fact, I did research on the Wuhan Institute, where this whole is one of the top institutes of viruses, and they have a huge amount of work going on. Americans actually collaborated with them. Americans unwittingly taught them a lot of stuff. Gave them grants because the Chinese always said that we are the center for research on bats and the coronavirus. This institute in Wuhan is well known for that. I had pictures. I had some articles that they have written. They have published papers on the man-made versus natural viruses. Papers with that title that they later withdrew. So I put a lot of this stuff on in the early days of my when the virus came, and I was talking about that subject. This was dismissed. These YouTube, Facebook type people would ban all of these kind of things. And people in India also did not react well. They thought I'm being a conspiracy theorist. So I stopped. Now it has come back in a big way. I actually think there's a lot to be said that that is the case. I actually believe that I'm not sure that the Chinese had the strategy that we'll do this on purpose and release it, because if that had been the case, they would have protected themselves a little bit better. But my feeling is that it was some kind of an experiment. They're doing some R&D, and there are these mishaps that happen in virus research all the time. When you're dealing with dangerous pathogens, this is not the first time that something has escaped and gone out of hand. So I think this was probably a technology being developed. It had not been finalized. It had probably not reached the stage where President Xi pushed the button and said, okay, now go with it. It was sort of happening when it accidentally leaked out. I think that's probably the case. So it was kind of a semi-finished, incomplete kind of a virus job, not truly perfected to do what it could do even more dangerously. And it somehow leaked out, and then it's gone. I feel that that's a scenario. I don't have any proof for it, but I have a lot of information, some of it publicly known, and some, the CIA has a huge amount of huge repository of documents on China, and they keep translating those from Mandarin Chinese to English, and some of it they make available to certain people from the outside, and some of it they classify. So I'm also an avid reader of that, and I feel that whether the world can publicly ever admit and acknowledge, and whether they can do anything to China, we don't know. But the fact is that it is unlikely that with no human involvement, this thing magically appeared in some fish market, animal market, and from there it went all the way. I think there is a human element, whether it is intentional or unconsciously accidental, whether it was part of a big government plan or just some research going on to investigate, that I don't know. But what is more important than the past is it is now abundantly clear that such technologies are within the power and within the control of labs. Matlab, whether Ranveer, you were doing it or not on purpose, now we know that you have the capability to do it again in the future. Different formulations, different mutations. See, that is what I'm saying. So now I know this. I'm using you as a kind of a mirror, but I'm saying I'm really referring to China. That now that we know about China, that this happened, even if it turns out this happened unintentionally, the point is the capability exists. It can be done intentionally. It can be done consciously. It can be done that, okay, this will only affect African people, or it will affect everybody except African people. Because if you look at what is the mRNA, this thing that Moderna and Pfizer, that Americans, very successful vaccines, because they're using a technology which is genetic oriented. And so you can build an immunity to a certain mutant, which will be not applicable to another mutant. You can build a mutant which is going to attack only a certain type of genetic makeup. The genetic medicine genetically controlled medicine for good purposes, good positive use, is a huge industry. So you can now have medicines that will only go to a certain organ in your body, or it'll only influence people of certain genes. You can look at, there's something you can edit with scissors. You can edit the genetic. You can know that this part of the gene is vulnerable to these kind of things, and you can remove them, which means you can also add them. If there's a genetic thing which protects you from certain disease. See, some genetic substance makes you vulnerable to a certain disease, so certain people are more vulnerable than others. But by the same token, there are certain genetic things, somebody has this in them, which will protect them from a certain disease. So now that we know, and this knowledge is exploding, this is big data. Genetic data is the ultimate big data. And this is going into all these machine learning systems, and they're figuring out these things faster than human beings could figure out. So this means that this new age of bio and AI, the marriage of biological sciences and computer science, learning how the biology works from the biologists, neuroscience teaching them how the mind works. Remember, all these AI systems are called neural networks. Why are they called neural networks? Neural is the human brain because it's modeled after that. It's inspired based on our understanding of the neural system. So neural system for mind sciences and biological systems for physical interventions. This is the future, a large part of the future of computer science. I'm a computer scientist by training, and my field was artificial intelligence. And I'm telling you that the biggest bonanza, or the biggest opening of computer science for intellectual property and research, has come in these life sciences, both in neuroscience for mental interventions, and also through the genetics for biological interventions. So the future is so promising in positive ways and so scary in negative ways. India has to be at the top of all this. India is not at the top of all this. And this is scary, that you end up as if India were to, I feel that Indians are smart, and if India were to set a target of what we'll achieve in terms of made in India, AI-based life sciences technologies and other kinds of technologies, what will we achieve by 2025, 2027, 2030, and put some serious brains. And just like ISRO, leave them alone. Don't center it in Delhi where ministers are going and messing around every day. Keep this out of Delhi somewhere and put some serious people, serious money. You will solve all these problems. You will bring brilliant people to work. Like one of the things that happened in NASA is all kind of physicists from all over the world came, and all these rocket scientists who used to work in Germany and they wanted to run away from Hitler, they all came to the United States. So NASA is able to harness the brains from everywhere. Russians aaye, sab log aaye. Now India can create similar to ISRO and similar to NASA, but in this new field that I'm talking about. It can create 2 or 3 ISROs and give them missions and give them money and have them the freedom to think on their own, technocrats. I would love to be involved just for fun, just to mentor, just to give my input. And I want nothing out of it. I don't want position. I don't want title. I don't want to be running anything. I just want to help. Yeah. And this would be a good thing to do.
I have 3 things to say, sir. The first is a recent article I read on the Manhattan Project. And for people who are listening on the podcast, the Manhattan Project was the project related to creating the atom bomb. And what sir just spoke about, where the physicists left Europe because they would either be recruited by Hitler or recruited by the Allied forces, which is USA and UK. So they decided to go on the USA side because they felt like that's the more ethical side. That's where there weren't the concentration camps. And the reason they joined the Manhattan Project is because they figured that if we don't get together and create an atom bomb, someone else on the other side will, and then it'll be deployed on the USA and on all the Allied forces. So let's side with the good. And that's a great way of looking at the times we live in as well. intelligent Indians need to, especially those who are in the field of AI, need to come back to India and develop things here for exactly the same reason that Sir is listed out in the podcast. So that's the first thing. I think the modern day Manhattan Project. The second thing I'd like to highlight is. I think that this is the main reason, honestly, that a bunch of my co-founders and myself are chasing big business in life to be able to fund projects like this and to fund opportunity like this in India. So I hope that we're on the right track. But the third thing, sir, most specifically, like I know you broke down how the biggest use of big data is in biology, where a lot of people believe that medicine has already learned everything about the human body, but that's not true. There's a lot of mysteries about the human body that are yet to be discovered. And that's probably where AI will be used in a beautiful way. But since you studied AI, since you studied biotech, what other kind of technologies are we on the brink of, according to you, which will kind of just create a very, very different world by the year 2031, according to you? Like, what else is out there?
So, you know, what's happening is one of the things I did in my book, this book, I'll just show it up there, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power. Now, one of the tables I have here is I'm looking at the location where the technology is based from, is it outside the body, is it inside the body, and how it's moving. So there's a table somewhere here where I'm actually looking at, yeah, this is a table on page 21. So what I'm looking at is that certain technology, it starts out on a web. So you can go to the web and you can enter something and it'll translate it in Hindi or whatever, some technology. Then the technology can be brought onto your device, your laptop or your mobile device. You can do the same thing. You don't have to go online. You can do it. Then it becomes a wearable. So from a handheld, it goes even more intimate, becomes a wearable. Nowadays, the watch is a big wearable. There's going to be augmented reality goggles. That'll also be a wearable, but it's still outside the body. It's not inside my skin. It's touching my skin. Wearable is touching the skin, and it's all the time on me, or almost all the time. Now it's going to go even further. It's going to go inside the body. So the implants are being done. We find Elon Musk is very famous for his ventures, and one of his latest ventures he thinks this is the biggest breakthrough that will happen, is AI-based implants.
Neuralink.
So, yes, and the US government is investing in that in a huge way. They have parallel things, CIA has, Chinese have. So American corporates, again, three people, American corporates, American government, military, CIA, second, and Chinese. These three are investing in this. And what they have done so far is quite remarkable. They are able to, these devices inside are able to recognize that you're about to get angry because there's a certain burst of neurons. And so they can anticipate and maybe control your anger, maybe put in a burst which is a happy burst, some happy memory that you had, so that your violence is controlled. They're working on ways that they can detect, a person is suicidal. So he's about to get this kind of a negative thought, and maybe they can intervene. So there are positive applications. It will be sold initially to the market, to the world. Aapke head mein, I'm going to put this implant for good reasons. It will help you, sir. If you are a depressed person, you are bipolar, you are suicidal, you have anger. Maybe the court will also say that if somebody has committed some violence, maybe domestic violence, then instead of throwing him in jail, he has to accept that there'll be an implant to prevent that. So if a person were given a choice in a court that you're either going to be in jail because you're a violent fellow, or you're going to have this implant that will keep you non-violent, a lot of people will say, hey, I'll better off getting this implant because I'm told they give you free Netflix also. They give you free Netflix, and they give you free porn, and they give you all kind of fun stuff when you put the implant. So, theek hai, hum mauj karenge, I'll live in this nice land, fantasy land. So this business of putting implants that'll do what, instead of augmented realities from the outside. So from an implant inside, they're going to give you an augmented reality, virtual reality. At first, it'll be or just prevent bad things from happening. Maybe, and then they'll find that this can enhance your learning. You can learn math more. You can become know many languages. So there will be a lot of good applications. And always technology has found good ways to be acceptable. And once acceptable, once more and more people are into this, it's become fashion almost. Almost you go to a cocktail party and say, "Arey bhai, maine to ye chip lagwa diya," and the other guy will say, "maine to usse bhi bada wo wala lagwa diya," and this guy will say, "maine to wo Facebook wala chip lagwa diya," and the other guy will say, "I got this Elon Musk, this is a new one, I got that one." So the way we show off with who got what kind of phone, smartphone or watch, maybe these implants will become highly fashionable. And even if they are not fashionable, then there are still US is developing implants. This has come on many shows also, where they will inject something into the body of the soldier who's in the front, and this will monitor his biochemistry, his blood levels, and if something is going to go wrong, it will anticipate well before any other method would have anticipated. So this is a way to keep the soldiers healthy. This is a way to anticipate problems. There is a company in Mumbai that has a blood test where it can predict cancer 1 year, if you're going to get cancer in the next year, exactly which kind of cancer. A very original kind of work they've done. It's also being done in Europe and US, similar kind of things. But now the implant will be kind of like a permanent surveillance of your biochemistry. Another kind of an implant will be a permanent surveillance of your neural network and mind. So I feel that these are technologies that are not 50 years from now. This is by 2030, these are realistic. These are commercial. These are things that will be marketed. So where is India in all this? This troubles me because this is the industrial revolution scale change in the world, new colonies, new colonizers. Within the countries, haves and have-nots. Now, what we are talking about and what we have not talked about as a problem in India is India's own people being classified as haves and have-nots on a new scale. We already have the disparity. But imagine half the people in India are barely educated. I mean, many are illiterate officially. Those who are literate, they're not functionally literate. I mean, like the driver of my mother's car, my mother's no more, but he's like family. He's living there and he's like the son in the house. He's hardly educated, but he's classified as an educated person because he can read and write his name. That is the definition of education. But when you talk about it, he cannot function as an educated person and get the job that requires some education. He cannot do that. I would say half of Indian people are not functionally competitive on a global scale. I mean, they can do menial tasks, very labor-intensive tasks. They can do some handicraft or whatever they can do. Now, that's a very large population. That's hundreds of millions of people. So what is going to happen to the large, social demographic group that we cannot afford to have, we cannot afford to give so much housing and free gas and free education and free medical and, all kind of facilities that human beings need. And of course, since we have these people, we should give them. But if we did not have such a large population of the poor kind, if we had, then your thinking would be correct that the youth of India, the one you're talking about are the well-educated youth of India, and the new industrialists, those are well-educated, and the new leaders, you're talking about that, but you're not acknowledging that those are like the top 20%, 25%. Then there is another 1/3 somewhere in the middle who are okay, maybe they can cross over, but there's a good half who are not likely in the next generation to cross over. I mean, this is a very big job. India did not educate its people. And this is a big crisis. I want people to tell me what is going to happen to the lower half of India at a time when the upper half is jumping ahead.
Don't you think internet penetration will play a role in like educating them as well? Because let's forget the education system. It's like kind of a dead beast. But the internet is like a beast by itself. So that's my big hope, even for them.
Yeah, but even that requires internet-based education, internet-based tutoring, mentoring, guiding a student. It cannot just be that you give them internet and the guy is just watching porn movies and Netflix and tamasha and cricket. Most of these guys, most of the people in that level that I'm talking about, They are using internet more or less like fun, tamasha, creating followers, getting friends. It is not serious education. It is not for that. I mean, you'll find that the number of people who subscribe for a course, which is not a trivial course, which has got something serious about it, even if it is free, the number of people is maybe thousands or lakhs. But then compare it with the number of people in the millions who are just looking at junk. So
Yep.
internet also needs to be, it does not, it needs the curating of internet, and giving some incentives to people. And they should be on a track to learn. That also requires some thinking and strategy.
Yeah. Like that's one of the problems we're trying to solve on one of our projects. We're trying to create a product that teaches people and entertains people at the same time. I can't reveal much of it on the show, but it's a product to solve exactly this problem. That how do we kind of make the process of learning fun for the average Indian?
See,
Um,
traditionally this was called edutainment, educational
yeah,
entertainment, and edutainment also has gone into the gaming. So
yeah.
you can make games. I used to make games way back
Oh
as a
wow,
programmer. So I know all this gaming stuff. I'm deep into this the ethos of gaming for good purposes.
wow.
You can create, you can make game. I even have a book coming out. I will reveal a little bit where I'm describing the cosmos as a game.
Oh my God.
And this is a Vedic view, by the way. The cosmos is a game.
Wow.
The whole startup, evolution, enhancement, dissolution, startup again. I'm modeling as a game
Wow.
for fun. This is just this is Bhagwan's Leela, which is a game. Bhagwan's
Yeah.
Leela is the most ultimate game.
Yeah.
Once you figure out some of the crucial aspects of the Leela as a game, then you figure out what if I put these in my game for human beings, my man-made game. I will copy some of what Bhagwan has done, and this is absolutely incredible because the what is called stickiness, what is the stickiness in this Leela is absolutely amazing because people are really into pursuing this, pursuing that. So suppose we can figure out the core tenets, what is the tattva of this game that gets
Wow.
people going into life so seriously. And if you can capture that and put it into a game where we can modify their thinking in a good way, what a big thing. So I'm into that
Yeah.
also.
So interesting that you're bringing up these topics, sir. It is going to be our main theme on the Hindi episode that we will shoot right after this. But coming back to this topic about educating the future of the country, let me ask you a simple question, sir. Don't even think too hard about it. Just give me a one-line answer. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Areva. You know, my movies have changed over time. But I would say the one movie that inspired me, that I felt was saying something that I was working on, was the movie Lagan, because I felt this idea that we are being ruled by rules, by laws that somebody else made, whether we have to play cricket and win and all that for our existence. Now what was the game of cricket that somebody brought and we have to play whether we win or lose, but our survival is at stake. Now these AI giants are making the rules of the game. The new game is not cricket only, the cricket, but these games, your social media is gamified. So how you respond will determine whether you become famous or not, how well your channel does. So it's a way of training you. You are being trained. The algorithm is training you. The owner of the technology trains the algorithm with big data. That is part
Yeah.
one. Somebody trains the algorithm, put his own bias and his own values into it. Then the algorithm manages all these people, trains them to behave accordingly. So the Chinese have got these algorithms to train this Muslim minority in one region of the country and make them good Chinese citizens. They get rewards. If they don't, they get punished. And they have now taken this gamification of of the Muslims and applied it to the general society. So all Chinese citizens are being gamified, and American citizens, the social media is a gamification system. Zuckerberg announced that now it will be allowed to discuss Wuhan as a possible origin, the Wuhan lab, man-made lab as a possible origin of the virus. Previously, it was not allowed. Now, who the hell is he? Who the hell is he to decide for 2 billion people, large percent of human beings, that this will be allowed and that will not be allowed? And then when they are accused of false content, they say, oh, we're not responsible for content. You can't have it both ways. If you are censoring, if you are blocking people, like they're blocking my channels a lot, if you are blocking people, then you are taking responsibility over content. You are taking a stand on what is right content, what is wrong content. Then in that case, when the content is dangerous and irresponsible, you're also, your neck on the line. So I feel that the movie that influenced me in a way that I could take its lesson, not just entertainment in a historical context in the past. I can take its lesson and apply it to the future. I can say this same game is being played now. In a virtual sense. We are being gamified, just like those guys had to play cricket and beat the people who made the game. And maybe we will learn how to do our own social media and learn how to beat all these guys like Lagan. They beat them in cricket in the end. So we got to learn from Lagan and figure out, okay, now how do we create that kind of a ragtag team with very little resources, but a tremendous amount of willpower, a tremendous amount of confidence and courage and all that. And look at the team. Everybody was optimized for his role. This guy is a tough guy, so he'll be doing this. This guy is not so tough, but he'll be doing that. Everybody doing a role. So I feel that India needs to create Team India. We need to have a team, a Bharat team, home team, I called it. We need to have a home team that is savvy about all these challenges and not afraid, facing squarely and out to win and learning. And we need to put all the resources into it.
Yeah. The reason I asked you about the movie is because I feel everyone's favorite movie is the piece of art where they find themselves in the most, where they say, okay, that's me on screen. That's what I want to do. That's where I see myself. And one way to educate the masses is through amazing storytelling. So going forward, I mean, I really feel there's a need for entrepreneurial stories and inspirational stories in Indian cinema rather than the ladka ladki hero villain kind of stuff. We need to be able to create more movies like Lagan, like Guru, things like that.
I feel that I am the person with a vision कि against all odds मैं ये cricket team बना दूंगा और हम उनको दिखाएंगे. We'll show them, we'll beat them at their own game. I want to do that for this new AI, internet, cyber, big data game. That is the new game, and I want to do the Lagan version, hopefully during my life, but certainly I'd like to inspire people that this work continues. So that is why I find such movies, because I can use the metaphor and move it up 20, 30 years and say, okay, today the metaphor can be applied in this way.
Yeah. And I see it happening. There is a huge need for inspiring content for this exact reason, that if we want more Indians to be risk takers, if we want more Indians to be job creators, it has to happen through storytelling. So we'll be moving on to the final section of this particular episode. Think of this as sort of a rapid fire section. It's all our questions from our Twitterverse. You were kind enough to retweet our tweet about questions for you. So this is the best of the lot. You've got your own cult following. That's one thing I can tell you from seeing all the questions. So let me begin with our Twitterverse section. And there's a lot of questions, honestly. Okay. Wow. Okay. Aman Maurya asks, overall, if you had to choose between a positive and a negative future of India, what do you think is more likely? Considering all the data that you have in your head, which side are we tilting on more?
Well, I'm very sorry that I can't give the good news to make people feel good. I've been doing the good news most of my life as in this area, saying that we want to build this great Indian grand narrative, and I've been working on it and documenting India's great achievements and all that. That is very important to do. That's past. The question is, can we project it into the future? And I feel that the percent of people like the ones on this show and you as a host and many other wonderful people, they are on the right track, but I'm not sure that that they have enough percentage share of mind of the Indian mind and the resources. And I'm particularly worried that there's a bottom 50% that are not even in the discussion. They don't even know what the heck is going on. They're just looking for basic dal roti, get a job, learn to be a little bit of a lower middle class fellow in a city, and leave the village life. There's an abandonment of villages because the agricultural economy is not able to support villages. There are so many people who are doing the five, six people doing the job that one person could do in a city like Delhi, in a domestic case, in a domestic situation, because they have. I mean, you ask them, why aren't you working in your village? They have no economy. There's no way to survive. So this is a very serious problem. I do not know how India can simultaneously solve the China problem, the Pakistan problem, the domestic breaking India forces, the overpopulation with 50% under the level where they're not able to sustain themselves. They need to be supported. These and then the politics of elections. You cannot get people to think much. They'll always say, "I got to go." Like Tejasvi Surya, for several years. I mean, his office says we want to do this with you, but then at the last minute it's cancelled because some meeting. He's moved into this MP meeting, that meeting in Delhi, that BJP meeting there. So when people who you think are brainy people are spending all their time winning elections, who's going to do this nation building? They are just building the political party. But the nation building is a much more important job. And that is largely in the hands of babus. And babus are not trained as subject matter experts. They're not trained in big management. They have no corporate management skills. They've never had to compete. So if you're running a railway ministry, that's the monopoly. You don't have to be measured against other competing railway ministries. If you are, if you are defense minister, who do you measure against? There is no benchmark. There is no competition. So you are just appointed, and you can boss, and you can say this is the best I can do, and this is a great job, and people will believe you or not believe you. But this IAS have never learned competition because they never had to. So all these issues together are formidable, and I had great hopes that there will be some amount of allocation of resource for advisors, for thinkers, for think tanks to pursue these things. And I kept giving proposal after proposal, many offers, many ways to help. And I found that the tendency in India was that if you're talking to RSS people, the leaders are brilliant, they're wonderful, good friends, but they'll hand it over to one of their or two or three of their own people who are considered to be relatively more intellectual to follow up. And they'll turn it into their own project and leave somebody like me out of it because they're threatened. They're threatened by outsiders. Similarly, BJP, all about their insiders, they will hand it. You give them a proposal, they'll hand it to one of their people to take it forward. Because they feel that that once they've got the idea from you, their slides from you, or a proposal from you, they've used you and they can dump you. But what they don't realize is that what you presented to them is just the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot more detail, and there's a lot. Having been the researcher to develop this over many decades, you also have the ability to mentor, to guide, to implement. But they feel that threatened. So this business of not being able to use the best ideas from wherever they are, okay, and incorporate them, but to have to control the top leadership so that they're all loyal to you, they're part of your group and all that. This is a very big handicap. The huge handicap in India has not been able to, the Indian government has not been able to induct the best talent on merit from wherever. They just not be able to do that. So I feel that the issues, it cannot be that I predict an outcome based on wishful thinking. Because मेरी wishful thinking तो I have given it all I got. I of course want India to succeed. I'll do anything I have to sacrifice for that outcome. But I have to be realistic. It is not a high probability.
Yeah. Maybe at some point there'll be a unit of entrepreneurs leading the charge if the babus and the governance can't handle it. It's an interest. Yeah, I mean that's the big hope, and that's the vision I have for myself in 2029 and 2030 that, okay, we would have got some capital from whatever we're building now. And then it's all about training the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Very good.
There's a follow-up, very interesting follow-up question from Captain Jack Sundaram. How do we create futuristic thinkers out of the young generation of Indians?
Wonderful. So I can only tell you my process, my journey was, I was a deep meditator. So that puts you in touch with some creative source inside. There's an infinite supercomputer with all the AI and all the brilliance that is in all of us. That is an app that we are born with. We have that kind of innate intelligence. We need to learn how to tap into that. And I was blessed with this gift, and this was encouraged and developed further by several spiritual masters during my early middle life. And so my ability to think big, to connect the dots, to figure out this thing has a cause-effect relationship with that thing. It looks like it's unrelated, but not so. If you change this, it'll change that. It's a big cause-effect relationship. That ability to think on a large canvas, multi-level, some of the moving parts are not even visible, they're beneath the surface. I got it early childhood, lot of such insights through meditation. The second is, I would encourage young people to get into a meditation program because it'll expand your mind. It'll make you a smarter person. I mean, if the Americans have picked up Indian meditation in the last 25 years and proven that you can have better athletes and you can have better mathematics and you can have better musicians, why are we not using it as a central part? So we should. It's a remarkable thing. Second thing is develop a reading habit and just be furiously reading other people's thoughts, whether it's a technology, whether it's a philosophy, whether it's their geopolitics. I wish India had a similar thing like China, like USA does, where they would translate all the Mandarin into English so that a lot of Indians can be reading it. Right now, what the average Indian thinker knows about China is very superficial. What they translated into English, some speech, or what the Americans have said about China, India gets to know. But India's own surveillance and understanding of China is very limited because of language and because we've never really pursued that. So I would say that the pursuit of knowledge through reading, not only the technology reading and the philosophy reading, those are very important. Also the geopolitics, the pragmatic reading of competitors, doing what I call Purva Paksha, which means study of the opponent. Purva Paksha means like in competitive research in marketing. That's a Purva Paksha. You study your competitors in marketing, you study them in military, you study them in politics. All that is Purva Paksha. It's a very good system in our tradition. We forgot. So when the Muslim invaders came, we were not studying them to figure out who are these, why they come, what is their strength, how many more will come, what is the money they have, what is their funding level, what do they want. I mean, we had no theory about them. We just allowed them to come. Next time, we would just react. It was like, when they come, we will fight. But in the meantime, let's not get into bad news. Let's think positive. Let's think positive that they won't come back. Let's think positive that Bhagwan has enlightened them and they will not invade us again. If they invade us, then we'll worry about it. That's not good enough. You've got to anticipate. And our tradition has been like that. The Purva Paksha is a part of our tradition that allows you to anticipate, that allows you to learn from other people and improve your own capability using the best examples from other people. So I would encourage Purva Paksha. So one is meditation, the other is a lot of studying and research, including the Purva Paksha study of other people. And then I think the young people, to be futuristic, should be courageous to do thought experiments, to do take risks, stick your neck out and say, okay, here's a proposal. And let people argue it. If they don't like it, you don't have to get personal. You don't have to abuse somebody because he came up with a proposal that was wrong. Are bhaiya, you have to be able to make mistakes. That's the only way you learn. If you do not tolerate risks and making mistakes, and it is a calamity that somebody made a mistake and then you have to punish him and go after him and abuse him. If you have a culture like that, which is what we currently have, then people will be very safe. Everybody will be a follower. You better get a job with somebody else and then he'll tell you what to do because you're too afraid. That is wrong. So our culture, if you look at our history, It is courageous people sticking their neck out, arguing, full of that. So we have to create in our youth a meditative person, well-read person, people who have got debating skills, which is part of Purva Paksha capability to be able to debate opponents in an articulate way, in a very civil and courteous way. And these people have to be extremely strong in taking on challenges. And if the data tells you that something is not right, accept it, and you have to do something about it. And not hiding in this feel-good comfort zone that I don't want to get into something which is not feel good. A lot of people tell me, sir, आप बोल रहे हैं, ठीक ही बोल रहे हैं, but आपने मेरा feel good खराब कर दिया. You know, so as if my job is to give him an addictive dose to make him feel good. One of the reasons China is so powerful is because they've raised 2 generations of youth who were told, you're not going to feel good. You may feel shitty because of where we are, but you got to work hard. You got to work your ass off for the country. And we're not here to make you feel good. So when you go to China, and I've been there many, many times, when you go to China and you talk to people, they're tough. Emotionally, they're tough. They're able to handle adversity because they've had so much adversity. And they have not been asked to hide it and in some Bollywood or some fantasy and all that. They are very realistic in facing adversity. Chinese are rugged, emotionally rugged, tough. That's a great asset when you're fighting long term. You can make your people go through years of suffering. India, you can't do that. Plus, it's a democracy. You lose elections if you do that. If you tell people that, look, we are going to go through a period of tightening our belt in terms of how much we do for fun, shun, and all that, in order we can channel this so that by 2030 we can be great. If you do that to people, you lose elections. You have to tell them, Kare bhaiya, you just vote for me, I'll solve all your problem right away, this, that. So that is, so the one thing one should also ask, is democracy safe for India? I mean, emotionally, that's what I want as a free thinker. Obviously I want. But as a pragmatic guy, can we afford the luxury of so much freedom? Or do we want to say that, okay, for 10 years, let there be a government, no elections, none of this nonsense. Let it just run and build a nation. I mean, all these great nations were built like that. They had, look at Singapore, look at, Taiwan, look at China, look at, Japan. They had a long history, stable, long-term, not having to fight for its own survival. That kind of governance, which is given like 10 years, and assume they're all honest people. They're not going to take you for a ride. I think India needs to compromise on its democracy on a temporary basis, not become a dictator, but just extend the tenure of people who've been elected. Maybe coordinate all the central and state elections and in one election day per 5 years, something like that. And no confidence motion, moving this, that, tamasha, drama, all that nonsense. Just you elected, fine. Unless you committed a crime and you can be impeached, unless that happens, 5 years, the guy is in place and he'll do his job. If you have 5-year term, maybe 10-year term for certain things, I think it's much better. India should consider it.
Rajiv sir, there's so many more questions, but I know that you're in the middle of a certain kind of process that you're going through with respect to what you told us at the beginning of the show, where you had a certain procedure with your back. And you know what? I'm going to leave all these questions probably for the next time. So I feel like I've not even unearthed maybe 1 or 2% of everything that you have to share with us. And I guess this was much more a learning session for me, for the ideas I want to put into the content I'm creating going forward. So let's just call it a day on this particular episode. And I'll allow the audience to kind of send in even more questions the next time you're coming in on the show. And we'll have a continuation of our Twitterverse round then. Even the Hindi episode, which will be around all your Vedic learnings, all your learnings about Indian culture. That's going to be something exciting. But as for this episode, sir, I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope it added some value to your life.
No, I'm very happy. Firstly, you're a good interviewer. You're a smart guy. You got your heart in the right place. You're a thinker. And you understand your audience and how to bring all these ideas out. I'm very happy. I would love to do many of these. In the next few days, we can schedule one every day or two. We can keep doing this. And I want to thank the audience. Their questions were very important, to the point, not frivolous questions not cheap shots, but serious questions, which is what I would like. And I want
Yeah.
you to continue raising these kind of questions because, we should raise the bar and have thoughtful discussion. We should encourage more and more of our young people to be very thoughtful, and not only in English, but also Hindi and, with different languages.
Yep.
I would love to be part of your show on an ongoing basis. And I want to thank you for that. So namaste to all of you until we meet again.
Yes, thank you again, sir. I'm hoping to have you again, maybe for some thematic episodes the next time. So thank you for joining us on the Ranveer Show.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here and also hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified. To donate, please click this button.